Britain is a small island set on the edge of Europe. For centuries, these shores were shaped by the sea, by trade, and by the need to endure. And yet, over time, this country came to govern lands far beyond its own horizon. Not overnight, not by accident. Through ships and navigation, through law, finance, and institutions, Britain built an empire that reached every ocean and touched nearly a quarter of the world. An empire whose influence is still felt today. This is the entire history of the British Empire, how it rose, how it ruled, and how it quietly came to an end. Long before it governed distant continents, Britain was a place of uncertainty, an island often contested, shaped by invasion, weather, and geography rather than global ambition. Its fields were modest, its population small, its power limited. What Britain possessed, however, was something less visible. A coastline that opened outward rather than inward. Ports that faced the Atlantic. Rivers that carried goods to the sea. In time, this geography would matter more than armies. Because before Britain became an empire, it first became a maritime nation. Britain did not set out to build an empire. It set out to trade. In the 16th and 17th centuries, English merchants began looking beyond Europe, first to the Atlantic, then further still. Small trading companies were formed, voyages commissioned, risks taken. The sea became a corridor of opportunity. Ports such as London, Bristol, and Liverpool grew busier with each passing decade. Ships carried wool, tobacco, sugar, spices, goods that tied distant shores to British markets. At this stage, there was no grand imperial design, only commerce, competition, and the steady expansion of maritime confidence. Trade brought wealth, but it also brought rivalry. By the late 17th century, Britain faced growing competition from other European powers, each seeking control of the same oceans and markets. Commerce could no longer rely on negotiation alone. It required protection. The Royal Navy began to expand, not as an instrument of conquest, but as a shield for trade routes stretching across the Atlantic and beyond. Shipyards multiplied. Dockyards grew busier. Naval discipline became a national priority. In time, Britain understood something crucial. Control of the sea meant security at home and influence abroad. And from that understanding, a different kind of power emerged. By the 18th century, Britain's naval strength had become decisive. Wars with rival European powers were no longer distant contests. They were struggles for control of trade routes, colonies, and oceans. From the Atlantic to the Indian Ocean, British fleets confronted Spanish, Dutch, and French ambitions. Victory at sea did not merely protect commerce, it reshaped the global balance of power. Ship for ship, battle by battle, Britain's command of the oceans hardened into strategy rather than circumstance. Naval power brought security, but it also brought opportunity. Across North America, the Caribbean, India, and beyond, trading posts grew into settlements, and settlements into colonies. What began as commercial footholds gradually required administration, defense, and law. Governors were appointed, charters were issued, flags were raised not merely to trade, but to govern. The empire was not declared in a single moment. It emerged incrementally, through negotiation, conflict, migration, and commerce. By the late 18th century, Britain was no longer simply a maritime power. It was becoming a territorial empire. By the late 18th century, the empire faced its first great rupture. In North America, 13 colonies that had flourished under British rule began to resist taxation and parliamentary authority. What followed was not merely rebellion, but revolution. The loss of the American colonies in 1783 forced Britain to reconsider how empire should function. Paradoxically, the defeat did not mark decline. It marked recalibration. From this moment onward, the British Empire would expand differently, more strategically, more commercially, and with greater administrative intent. If the loss of America forced Britain to rethink empire, India would redefine it. The East India Company had begun as a trading enterprise, chartered, commercial, ambitious. Yet over time, it acquired territory, commanded armies, and governed millions. In India, the empire became something unprecedented. Not merely a network of ports, but a system of administration stretching across vast regions. Company officials collected taxes, negotiated treaties, and enforced law. Trade and governance merged. By the early 19th century, Britain's influence in India was no longer peripheral. It was central, economically, politically, and strategically. Yet power accumulated through commerce carried its own risks. By the mid-19th century, resentment in parts of India had grown over taxation, governance, military policy, and cultural intrusion. In 1857, rebellion erupted. What began as a mutiny within company ranks expanded into a wider uprising. The conflict shook the foundations of company rule. When order was restored, one conclusion was unavoidable. Empire could no longer remain in private hands. Under Crown rule, the empire expanded with renewed authority. Railways were laid across India. Telegraph lines linked continents. Steamships shortened oceans. London stood not merely as a capital, but as the centre of a vast global system. At the height of its power, the empire appeared unassailable. Its navy ruled the seas. Its industry outpaced rivals. Its territories spanned continents. Yet beneath this confidence lay tension. In southern Africa, conflict with Boer republics exposed the limits of imperial control. The war was costly, financially and politically. It revealed that modern warfare demanded more than imperial certainty. Across Europe, rival powers were industrializing, militarizing, and competing for influence. The global balance was shifting. The empire was vast, but it was no longer uncontested. In 1914, Europe descended into war. What began as a continental conflict rapidly expanded into a global one, and the British Empire was drawn into it in full. From Britain itself and from Canada, Australia, India, Africa and beyond, millions answered the call. Imperial resources, manpower and industry were mobilized on a scale never before seen. The war reshaped the empire's relationship with its dominions. Soldiers from across the imperial world fought side by side on the Western Front, in the Middle East and in Africa. Victory came in 1918, but at immense cost. The empire emerged enlarged in territory, yet weakened in confidence. The war had demonstrated both its reach and its vulnerability. The world had changed, and so had Britain's place within it. Victory in 1918 did not secure lasting stability. Britain faced debt, industrial unrest, and the burden of administering an expanded empire. In Ireland, India, and Egypt, demands for self-rule intensified. Economic crisis in the 1930s deepened uncertainty, while new authoritarian powers rose in Europe. The peace was uneasy and temporary. In 1939, Europe descended into conflict once again. This time, the threat was immediate and existential. Britain stood largely alone in the early months, facing aerial bombardment and the prospect of invasion. Across the empire, soldiers mobilized once more. The war demanded total commitment, and survival became the priority. By 1942, the tide began to shift. British forces, alongside Allied partners, halted Axis advances in North Africa and defended vital sea routes. Industry intensified at home, supplying a global war effort. D-Day in 1944 marked the return to continental Europe. After years of sacrifice, victory came in 1945. But Britain emerged victorious and profoundly weakened. The war had preserved Britain's freedom, but it had drained its strength. Debt mounted, cities required rebuilding, and imperial commitments stretched beyond capacity. In India, independence became inevitable. Across Asia and Africa, nationalist movements gained momentum. The empire that had once expanded confidently now began to contract, not in sudden collapse, but in steady retreat. In 1956, the Suez Crisis exposed the limits of Britain's post-war power. When Egypt nationalized the canal, Britain intervened alongside France and Israel. Yet international pressure, particularly from the United States, forced withdrawal. It was a defining moment. Britain remained influential, but no longer imperial in authority. The global order had shifted. As formal empire receded, a new framework emerged. Former colonies became independent nations, yet many chose to remain within the Commonwealth. Britain's role shifted from ruler to partner. The age of imperial command had ended. In its place stood diplomacy, trade, and shared institutions, a quieter influence in a reordered world. Empires rise, expand, and recede, but their influence endures. The British Empire reshaped trade, law, language, and the modern map. It brought connection and conflict, opportunity and upheaval. Today, its legacy remains woven into global institutions and shared histories. Not as command, but as inheritance, complex, contested, and lasting. History does not disappear, it evolves. In the decades that followed, Britain reshaped itself once more. Industry modernized, cities rebuilt, and society grew more diverse. Former imperial ties became cultural and economic connections. No longer an empire, Britain remained a global nation, influential in finance, diplomacy, education, and defense. Its power had changed form. Its history, however, continued to shape its path. Britain remains what it has always been, an island shaped by the sea. Its history was never inevitable, nor was its empire permanent. What endured was adaptability, the ability to trade, to govern, to rebuild, and to redefine its place in the world. The empire faded, but the nation persisted. On the edge of Europe, the story continues. Britain's story is not unique in history, but it is distinctive. Like Rome, Spain, and others before it, it rose through ambition and declined through change. Yet decline does not erase significance. Empires shape the world long after their banners are lowered. They leave institutions, ideas, and connections behind. In that sense, the British Empire belongs not only to Britain, but to world history. History is not a straight line of triumph or decline. It is a continuum, shaped by geography, ambition, conflict, and adaptation. Britain's empire rose from the sea and returned to it, leaving behind institutions, language, and connections that endure. The island remains, changed, yes, but not diminished. On the horizon, as ever, the waters are open, and history moves forward. From the docks of London to distant continents, Britain's past travelled far beyond its shores. The empire ended, but the exchanges it created, of ideas, people, and culture, continue to shape the modern world. History does not belong to one nation alone. It belongs to everyone who lives in its aftermath. Long after the empire's political authority faded, the commercial networks it helped establish continued to operate. Shipping routes, financial institutions, and trading partnerships linked Britain to markets across the world. From London's financial district to ports across Asia, Africa, and the Americas, these economic connections endured. Beyond trade and territory, the empire left another enduring legacy: language, and institutions. English spread across continents, becoming a common medium for diplomacy, commerce, and education. Legal traditions and parliamentary systems influenced governments far beyond Britain's shores. In many nations, these frameworks continued, adapted, debated, and reshaped by new generations. Across Britain, the empire left its mark on cities as well as institutions. Ports such as London, Liverpool, and Bristol grew into major centres of commerce, finance, and industry. Ships arrived carrying goods, wealth, and people from across the globe. These cities became gateways, linking Britain to a rapidly expanding world. Empire did not move only goods and wealth, it moved people. Sailors, workers, soldiers, merchants, and families travelled across oceans, linking distant societies. Over time, these journeys reshaped communities in Britain and beyond. Cultures met, ideas travelled, and new identities gradually formed within an increasingly interconnected world. As the 20th century progressed, Britain adjusted to a world no longer defined by empire. Independence movements reshaped the political map, while new international institutions emerged to manage global cooperation. Britain remained engaged through diplomacy, alliances, and trade, adapting its influence to a rapidly changing international order. Centuries after its expansion began, the influence of Britain's empire could still be traced across the world. Languages, legal traditions, financial networks, and political institutions carried echoes of that history. Though the empire itself had faded, the connections it created continued to shape international relationships and the modern global landscape. Britain's empire has passed into history, yet its story remains woven into the modern world. From distant ports to global institutions, traces of that past still endure. The island that once looked outward across the seas continues to face the horizon, shaped by history but always moving forward. And like all history, the story is never truly finished.